Well, here we are again. Man cave time again. More than biker man cave, that is, of course. Now, last time we rode down from Portpatrick down to the lighthouse at the Mull of Galloway, which was episode 1, I suppose, really, of a 3-episode trip. Now, this upcoming one, is episode 2, which is the return journey from the lighthouse back up to Portpatrick, but up the west side of the South Rim of Galloway, visiting, amongst other places, Port Logan, and a very special hotel for an afternoon tea, the Knockinaam Lodge Hotel, which has a bit of a story to it, to say the least. So have a look what you think, see what you think. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but give us a thumbs up if you like it. If you don't like it, tell me. And again, if you've got any comments for me, please make them, because I always answer them and it's always nice to see them. Anyway, see what you think. Cheers. Welcome back. This is intrinsically part 2 of my Rins of Galloway series of videos. Sounds very grand, doesn't it, that? But we're starting from the end of the previous part, which is the Mull of Galloway itself. This is the Mull of Galloway Lighthouse in front of us, which was built by Robert Louis Stevenson's grandfather, in actual fact, in 1830, and it's been guiding ships ever since. Automated in 1988 was this one. They were all automated by 1998, I should say. So there's the Isle of Man. It's actually 30 odd miles away, is the Isle of Man. Doesn't look it. And the Irish coast over there is 22 miles away. And today I do believe we can see the English coast. Way over there. Blencathra and Skiddaw, 60 odd miles away, so it is a clearer day than it looks. So the Gallicray coffee shop, where I've just had my lunch, lovely place. It really is a nice place, very tastefully built as well, with a turf roof, and this imposing piece of rock architecture in front of us. This is where the Gallicray gets its name from, the coffee shop. This is Gallicray, supposedly named after, well, I don't think he was King of Galloway, he might have been Lord of Galloway, was Galdus, and allegedly that piece of rock is named after him, and that is actually the southernmost point of Scotland, is Gallicray itself. Now we're just going to be retracing our steps for a few miles, so I'll keep my trap shut and I'll come back when we start on a slightly different route. Incidentally, the monolith out there amongst the cattle is the Kennedy Stone. Nobody, and I mean nobody, knows who it commemorates or what it's all about. I did leg it across there once when I was down here with the coach, and there is a memorial slab, but it is so weathered away you can't see anything on it, so we're no better off. Anyway, like I say, that's it for now. Now we came up from down to the right, so we're going to carry on across here. Now the Church of St Medon is indeed in Dromore down to our right, but the parish is actually the parish of Kirkmichael. Now Kirkmichael is a tiny place, a tiny village in front of us, but it does have certainly what used to be the parish church, and because it used to be it was quite an important church. The church here at Kirkmichael is known as the Church of the Covenant, and that's because it was built in 1638, which was the year that the National Covenant for Scotland was signed by who became known as the Covenanters. You see, up until then, the main accepted religion here in Scotland was Presbyterianism, and all was very well until King Charles I came to the throne, and he decided things had got to change. But the Covenanters, a lot of the Covenanters, stuck to their guns and refused to accept the change. And it was eventually decreed that anybody who went against the word of the king or the demands of the king would automatically be guilty of treason. So the Covenanters were considered to be treasonous, and the Church of the Covenant is up to our right. As I say, built in 1638. There's a notorious, a very black page in the history locally about a group of Covenanters just across the water to our right, really, in the town of Wigtown. Wigtown was the county town of Wigtown Shire, which was the old county that we're in now, although it was all swallowed up in 74 to create Dumfries and Galloway. Dumfriesshire, Kirkcudbrightshire and Wigtown Shire were all built into one large county. What happened was there was a group of people found holding their Presbyterian services against the law, and they were tried and found guilty of treason. Three men were hung for treason, and there were two ladies, two Margarets, who were sentenced to death by drowning. Horrible. And they were tied to a stake out in Wigtown Bay. They were tied to a couple of stakes out in Wigtown Bay at low tide, and they stayed there tied to the stakes until the tide came in slowly and drowned them very, very slowly. Inhuman, absolutely inhuman. But that's the Wigtown martyrs. Now we're keeping to the west side of the Mull, coming back, and these standing stones, there's one in the field on the left. That's a genuine standing stone from probably thousands of years ago, but up on the top, up to the right on the skyline, that's a replica. That's a replica of the Bruce's stone. Robert the Bruce defeated the English in Glentrool in 1307, and there is a stone planted there in Glentrool to mark his defeat of the English. But that one, the farmer here on the right, he has a fascination with standing stones, and he put that one there himself. Now, as I've said, we're keeping to the west coast of well, it's not the Mull of Galloway, it's the South Rin now, and we're coming down to It's a very nice little village, Port Logan. Hasn't always been Port Logan though. Its original name was Port Nessac. In fact, its Gaelic name still reflects Port Nessac. But it was bought, the entire village was bought by the Laird of Logan, Andrew McDowell, back in the 1600s. And he had big plans, because he knew about the ferries operating out of Portpatrick, which I'll cover tomorrow, and he wanted to get in on the act, import export, that sort of thing. So he bought the place and he had the pier built and developed with the help of Thomas Telford. This place would be even better if it still had a pub. That place on the left, the Logan Bay Hotel it was, until somebody with bigger ideas than he got the ability to realise effectively destroyed the place, closed it down, and it never opened up since. But some people might recognise the primitive lighthouse cum bell tower at the end of the pier from some point in the past. I used to watch it myself. It's a dramatisation, well, it was a drama series starring Paul Kay and Michelle Collins. 2,000 Acres of Sky it was called. And it was supposedly a wee island off the Isle of Skye. But his plans, McDowell's plans for the place never came to fruition, and it was a bit of a white elephant for him, really. It was always a bit of a fishing port anyway, although not so much these days. Another one of his developments was over on the far side of the bay, just come into view from behind the lighthouse. That's Port Logan Fish Pond. It was his fish store, I suppose, really, because what there is across there is a blowhole, and at high tide the tide comes in and pushes its way through and up into the blowhole and into a pond on the other side, and with the water comes the fish. Once they're in there, they can't escape. So that was his store of fish. Back in the day, that was his fish larder, I suppose. When he fancied a bit of fish and chips on a Friday night, he'd send one of his underlings up to pull a cod out or whatever, to take it back to the big house for his lordship to enjoy his fish tea, fish supper. That's oversimplifying things a bit, really. But yes, it's a great little place, it really is. Now, one last little thing about Port Logan and Andrew McDowell. When he bought the place, when it became his, you can see from here the tops of the cottages just behind the sea wall. Behind you can see another row of cottages higher up, out of the way. The thing is, he bought this whole lot and he wanted to put a big causeway for all the cattle, the horses, the donkeys, everything they were going to be selling to the Irish or buying from the Irish to bring them across. So he thought that if he built a set of cottages higher up the hillside, then those that were his tenants that were living in the cottages by the water's edge would move out and leave him to do what he wanted with the existing cottages. But when he came to it, they didn't want to move, they wanted to stay where they were. And he said, but why? I built this causeway in front of your houses so you don't have a view of the sea. And their answer to that was, that causeway is very useful because it keeps the sea off our front porches, so we're happy to stay where we are. And he sort of, that didn't work out for him. But as you can see, as we ride back, a lot of them actually built a second story on top of the single story cottages, just so they got the view of the sea back. But anyway, that's Port Logan, a really nice little place. I'm sure you'll agree. This was the lifeboat house here. It's not stationed here anymore. It's now the village hall. So you can see the cottages on the right. These are the original cottages with this causeway built across the front of them. And like I say, a lot of them have built on the second story. In 2000 Acres of Sky, Michelle Collins' character actually lived in one of those cottages. So the Port Logan fish pond is across there in the rocks over on the left, and tourists can go across there and actually feed the fish. At a price, of course. Anyway, that was Port Logan. Now we're headed back over towards the west coast slowly, but we're passing the grounds of Ardwell House, or passing through the grounds of Ardwell House really. Although, like I say, Ardwell House is very well hidden by the trees and you can see nothing of it. This is Ardwell Church, or Kirk, on the right here. Now where we're heading towards, and we're going to visit in actual fact, I've booked us an afternoon tea there, is it's a hotel these days, but it was originally a hunting lodge. It's actually called the Knockinaam Lodge Hotel. Quite exclusive for people who want to stay there. You're talking hundreds of pounds a night. In fact, it's more than that for one particular suite. And that suite is the Churchill suite. Because Churchill, during the Second World War, he had a lot of time for Scotland in general, and he held meetings with his Allied commanders, the likes of Eisenhower and those, in secret locations, and one of those locations was Knockinaam Lodge. He fell in love with the place, and he actually had a suite decorated and furnished to his taste. Which he used not only during the meetings but also on his getaways up into Scotland. And that suite still exists, and I've seen it for myself. I came across for a cup of tea a few years ago on my day off from the coach driving, and there was nobody staying, and the nice receptionist I was talking to her about, and she said, "Do you want to have a look at it?" And she took me up to the suite, and yes, it is absolutely as he left it. The bath is an amazing contraption. I don't think I've ever seen a deeper bath in my life. I'll switch back on when we get to Knockinaam, so you can see what I've been rambling on about. Now we're coming down to Knockinaam Lodge now. I booked my afternoon tea for 3:30 and it's 3:25 now, so my timing's pretty good. Now what exactly afternoon tea entails, I have no idea, nor have I any idea how much it's going to cost. But it's in the name of the channel, so it's got to be worth it, hasn't it? And it is a bit special, as you'll see. It's I mentioned earlier, it's got its it has its origins as a hunting lodge. It's now a high-class hotel with its own private beach. So this is Knockinaam Lodge on the right hand side. Favoured haunt of Sir Winston Churchill. I'll go and park in the car park. Right, let's go and see, shall we? So I'm going to take my afternoon tea and the patio above the beach. It looks a bit changeable, does the weather, but it's warm enough. So there we go, overlooking the private beach. Nobody swimming today. Oh well, time for tea, as they say. See you later. So that was afternoon tea at the Knockinaam Lodge Hotel. And it is truly a bit special. You can see why Churchill favoured the place so much. Absolute secrecy. So few people knew the place existed. And still do, for that matter. Back to Portpatrick now. Come back this way because in just a short time the view from the crest of the rise really is a bit special. Now this area locally is known as Hush Hush. Where on earth does that come from? The only piece of information I could find. Now look at that for a surprise view. Northern Ireland over the way. Mountains and Mourne in front of us. Entrance to Belfast Loch. And the North Channel. And then in the middle distance, Dunsky Castle. Which just to our right was my home for last night. So yes, Hush Hush. The only information I could find was to hark back to the wartime years, the wartime days, the days of the meetings between Winston and his allied commanders. Oh, the signpost gone. That was the signpost to prove my point. That signpost was to Morach, which is down below us, via Hush Hush. And the only explanation I could find was that prior to the secret meetings with that was the signpost to prove my point. That signpost was to Morach, which is down below us, via Hush Hush. And the only explanation I could find was that prior to these secret meetings with the likes of Eisenhower and Allied commanders, was that plainclothes policemen would come round visiting the locals and say, now look, you might see faces that you think you recognise from newsreel films. It is who you think it is, but it's very hush hush, so don't tell anybody. Where else could it come from, for goodness sake? Hush hush. Anyway, it's those three words again. Allegedly, supposedly and reputedly. Might be true, might not. But the one thing we are going to see is evidence of the railway that used to come to Portpatrick. I'm going to cover that more on the last episode, or the last edition, shall we say. Because this bridge in front of us, this was a railway bridge. Not anymore. Hasn't been since about 1950. The train used to come from Stranraer out to Portpatrick, and it served a very useful purpose for just a few years. It was all about the ferries to Northern Ireland. I'll tell you more about that. In the final part. So here we are, our home for the night, the Crown Hotel here at Portpatrick. Oh, the boys are in.